How do you make a Nightlord appear regal? That was the problem I was faced with when tackling the Nighthaunter model, and I want to go through some of the steps I took when painting to ensure that this happens. The first thing you see when you look at a Nightlord is the blue of their armour. With my characters, I always go with an elevated blue that is of high saturation, that catches your eye more than a traditional darker midnight blue. I did the same thing with Curze. This was edge highlighted with a grey night steel, ironically, and what this does is just brings out that metallic tone, and if you edge highlight correctly, not just the entirety of the model, then you get the light hitting the right place to bring out some of the sharper points. The next thing is the trim, and the trim is almost more important than any of the base colours because it's kind of the first thing you see. It's the highest colour. If you look at the armour, it goes the trim, and then on the inset is the base colour. So the trim gets your eye first. For all my other Nightlords characters, the trim is a gold, going brass, and it's edge highlighted with Canoptic Alloy, which is a dirty, bronzy, brassy colour, which brings them down to remind you they're a Traitor Legion. With Curze, I edge highlighted in an Auric Gold. This brings him up above all of them, whilst also semantically bringing him up. Gold is a richer colour than brass, and it means that when the light hits this model, those gold reflections on the edges of the trim are just brilliant because it's subtle enough but also so bold. Gold is a colour that you cannot just throw on a model. It has to be thought about because it's so strong and rich, and the message behind gold is so different to the message behind, say, silver. The message behind silver is it's not the best. Gold, on the other hand, you don't get better. Gold is this idea of being sublime, pristine, elegant, royal. That is what I wanted to convey by doing this. The next important thing are the undertones. The suit of armour that the Primarchs wear are, amongst themselves, all entirely different, especially when compared to a Space Marine. So it's hard to know what colour the undertone of the suit would be. I'm talking about the stretch of material on their stomach area that surrounds their back, the bits that aren't plated, their hands, their neck, that on a Space Marine would just be black or a dark metallic colour. With the Nighthaunter being primed silver, this left me room to go with a washed down black that has a metallic edge whilst remaining under the blue. You don't want them to get caught up in one another and be fighting for the prime spot. So I went with a black that was very dilute and left a metallic edge. Then we've got, of course, the most important part of any Nightlord, the adornments. I'm talking the flesh cloaks, the skulls, the hands, the arms, the legs, anything that you wouldn't see on an ultramarine. These are all painted white and then coated depending on the surface. The flesh is a pink and yellow blended together to fuse into this awful flesh tone. You don't need to highlight this. It's meant to be dull. It's not meant to catch your eye. The skulls are white, of course, and then coated with a shade of your choice. If you prefer a really dark, kind of almost white but shaded black skull, then just water down some black, which is essentially what I do. I use a Rattling Grime, which is a brown. It just brings some of those earthy brown tones into the skull that you would see on a normal skull. I've seen people use yellows as well. Skulls are all sorts of different colours. For a Nightlord, if you're going for that kind of character-esque vibe, the white skull is good because it's more comical than maybe a realistic yellowy skull, and it also fits in with a lot of the different tones that they share. They have the pale skin. I've done mine on a snow base so that it kind of ties in the whites, things like that. Then any other pieces of metallic armour or weaponry that are hanging about. So on Konrad, his claws and his power pack frills, as well as some other bits and bobs that are about screws and things like that. Just a dark grey. Again, you don't want to draw attention to these things, and the bits you do, you should edge highlight or highlight in a metallic silver, such as the claws on his arms, because they're a crucial part of his character, right? So draw attention to them. I'm not good at painting faces. Now, luckily the model did a lot of work for me, and something about painting Nightlords that is so great is that they are pale. They are meant to be as white as snow, and second to that is that their eyes, if they're a true Nostraman, are black. They have no white like human people do. They are black because they were born into the darkness. So you don't have to faff about painting pupils and getting colours and stuff in the irises. You just paint their eyeballs black. It's still difficult because eyes on a miniature are small, and this model has big eyes for a miniature, but they're also deep in his face, which is another feature of Curze that elevates him above the other Nightlords. He has this sort of handsome jawline with this grimacing grin all the time. I essentially just painted his face white and then did exactly the same as I do for my skulls, but with a more dilute wash of black, and this just shades all the recesses and sits in between all of the teeth ridges and goes deep into the eye sockets, and you get this very pale face that's so dark at the same time. It's really, really effective. And then I just painted his eyes black. Simple. His hair is black. Black hair is probably the hardest hair colour to paint, because if you were to paint a blonde hair colour, just one coat, no shading, maybe like a wash, it would look like hair. But if you just paint black hair black and leave it, it looks like you forgot to paint it, because a lot of us prime our minis in black. So you have to do some layering and some highlights and some washing. This is when you begin to realise when you're painting that the colours you see in real life and you describe in real life do not represent the colours that you see literally. Black hair isn't black, it's blue. It's a very, very dark blue, and it's grey, because when the light hits black hair, that's when you see it. If you were to see black hair without any light, it's black, but then you wouldn't see it. So when you paint a model's hair black, yes, it should be black to begin with. And with Curze, I went just in with grey. I really wanted to do blue, and I did some blue on the underneath very subtly, so it looks like the metallic of his armour is reflecting off his hair. The hair is black with grey highlights near the top and near the bottom where the light would catch the hair. And then I went over it with a very, very light gloss varnish because it would be greasy. Unfortunately, that's the gross truth of the Nightlords and any of the traitor legions. Their hair's greasy, it's a fact. Finally, we move on to the base. The base is just as, if not more important than the actual model itself, because it's kind of the scenery that the model is set in. You're setting a scene, quite literally. The model I was painting included a aquila wall-shaped piece of rubble with arms and faces attached to it, as well as an Imperium soldier. I uplifted that, added some rocks, added some grass, put the snow in as I usually do with my Nightlords, and I also have these 3D printed nameplates, which is a point of contention because I spelt Curze's name wrong. I won't tell you the mistake, see if you can spot it yourself, but someone on Reddit pointed it out to me, so I'm very upset about that, but I'll fix it in post at some point. So it's not a problem. I like to think I tied him in well with the scenery. The point was for me a little bit was for him to stand out. Normally I'd kind of drape snow all over them and make them look like they've been trudging through the snow. I kind of wanted him to look like he hadn't, which is a bit counterintuitive based on what I just said, I realised, but he's a Primarch. He wouldn't see battle very often, and so it's kind of like he's making a fleeting visit to this piece of rubble that he stood on. And I think the rubble is meant to reflect his flesh wall that he has in his private chamber in his ship, the corpse wall, which is cool. But yes, that's the base. And that's it. I wanted to finish up just by saying I had a really great time painting this model, and I want to thank Artel W who produced this model. They have some really great quality stuff, so please check out their stuff. I've got a couple of models from there, and I'll be doing other videos discussing them as well. I'll always point out where the model's from. I put off painting the Primarch for a long time. I was doing some batch painting for a while, got a bit bored of that, so I came back to the character painting. Batch painting is a lot different. It's about efficiency, trying to make painting the same model essentially over and over again less tedious. Whereas character painting is the complete opposite. You want it to be slow, methodical and accurate. And I find that more rewarding. It can be more stressful because any small mistakes are unforgiving sometimes. You often have to start a place again, which is fine. It's part of painting. The best painters will admit that they make the mistakes and they do have to correct them. If you watch some of the bigger painting channels, Cult of Paint, Pete the Wargamer, they make mistakes and they admit to these mistakes, and unfortunately sometimes an idea doesn't quite come to fruition when you're painting and you have to go back and tweak certain things. You might think it's going to look great but it doesn't, and that's fine. So yeah, I had a great time. I've got another couple of video ideas that I want to do of my other characters I've done. One I'm really excited to talk about is the Exalted from the Nightlords trilogy. I'm yet to see a really good Exalted kit bash, and I'm really happy with mine. I want to credit some of the people that I got the ideas from and show that off. It's not my best paint job ever, but it is probably my favourite character I've painted because it is mine. You can't buy this model. So I will be talking about that soon. Thank you for sticking around to the end, or at least to skipping to the part that you wanted to watch. And if you are still here, I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about what this channel is going to be, because there's plenty of painting tutorial channels out there and the space is becoming quite dilute. I find I struggle to locate a video tutorial I want to follow completely. That's probably because I like to do things in my own style, but I don't have my own style. So I take bits and bobs of different channels, and I think that's probably the best way to do it. This channel is going to hopefully inspire some people. I don't expect people to tune in and copy what I've done. I don't think a lot of people want to do that. If you do want to do that, there's plenty of other channels, and where possible I will include detail about things I've done so you can use those things. But if it's a generic, oh, I painted a darker blue on a lighter blue to create this effect, you can just search up different shades of blue and buy them and do it. And that's kind of what I'd encourage people to do. It's what I did, and it's how I learned how to paint different things. And I'm not a very good painter. All of my stuff character-wise is done using contrast paints in a technically maybe more difficult way than would usually be done. I don't just slap them on and call it done. I do build up different layers and bits and bobs technically that are maybe more difficult. But this is how I'm painting, and these are the ideas behind why I'm painting, and I want to share that. I want people to be able to sit down, start painting something and put me on in the background and just listen to me waffle about a few different things. And the next time you go to paint something, you might think, oh, I should try using this instead of that because of what this bloke said on the internet. So that's kind of the point. The other thing is to document my kind of painting journey. I'm still very early on in the days of painting. I've only been painting for actually less than a year. I'm already having such a blast with it, and I also want to give credit to some of the people I've learned from. The main thing I really want to hammer home is just do it. Don't be afraid to do it. It sounds really silly, because why would you be afraid to paint a little plastic bloke? But every time I've painted, I've learned something, and from my first character to my last character, I have such improvements that just at first glance you don't notice, but I notice, and you would notice if you started painting your own stuff. So that's what I want to do. I want to be background noise with a small showcase, maybe a discussion about a few of the things I decided to do based on a character and their personality that may have gone under the radar. And I hope that you can be inspired to paint something, whether it's good, bad, or just for fun. Yeah, I don't expect anyone to stick around and watch more of these. They are going to be case by case. It's not a series. I'm going to upload sort of what I want to begin with, and as things develop, if I enjoy doing certain things, I'll upload more of those. But for me, this is a process that I want to document, and for you, hopefully you can just gain some form of entertainment, background noise, or a little bit of inspiration for your next model or kit bash. I'm also approaching everything from a very user-friendly standpoint. I'm not going to be buying hundreds of kits worth hundreds of pounds. I'm just a guy. For me, it's more about the painting, but I'm also trying to be a bit realistic. So yeah, that's what the channel is going to be about. Thank you for sticking all this way to the end. I'll probably insert this little message into a few of the next videos, so if people are watching for the first time, they can see what's going to happen. I might even dedicate a video to talking about the space once I've got a few things going. But that's it. Thank you very much. Don't feel like you have to watch any more of my videos, but I do appreciate you tagging along and putting up with me. So thank you very much. Catch you around.